Hey everybody, it's Jack here with the Healthy Gamers channel, and then I'm here with Ziggy D, and we're going to talk about some Path of Exile today. So how you doing, Ziggy?
I'm good, thanks, Jack. Thanks for having me on.
We're going to talk about Path of Exile. The new open beta came out last Wednesday, if that's correct. I've lost track of time a little bit, but well, we want to give you our impressions for it. So let's go ahead and talk about how have you thought the launch went, Ziggy?
I thought overall the launch has been pretty good. The first day or so was all right, but I think it really picked up in terms of traffic to the site and to the game and everything like that. So it's been a little bit unstable, especially around US peak time lately. So I pretty much avoid playing then. That's like the morning for me. So a little bit awkward, but I can usually avoid playing then for a bit. There's just been a lot of disconnects and stuff, but there's something they've been working on, and they're constantly releasing patches trying to fix any problems that come up. So pretty good. I know some people had issues downloading the update or the client the first time round. I didn't really have any problems with that though. What about
Right.
you?
No, I remember, and they were just exploding with people. They were I think they were saying they had like 40,000 that as soon as they started, and then they were up to like 55,000 and like 70,000. If you just followed their Twitter, they were just getting
Yeah,
hammered. So I
yeah,
mean, that's the sign that this is a game. This is a great game. But
yeah,
I also like their communication is just top notch. Like you follow their Twitter, and I remember I got kicked off of like at 9 o'clock on Saturday night, and I was wondering, is it my end, is it their end? And I went to their Twitter, and 1 minute later, after I was kicked off, they had a Twitter
yeah.
update that told us that the servers were getting hammered and they were going to restart the servers. And so I thought that was amazing, communication on the part of the devs.
Yeah, I think Chris's work in the US promoting the game in the couple days leading up to the open beta really paid off. He did a lot of interviews and things like that, which I watched a few of those, and it was really cool, and people got really excited about the game. So going
I
free to
really
play,
agree. I
yeah.
mean, it's the hype is well worth it. So I'm sure you guys have been starting, see a lot of videos, and I say the hype is this is a game that the hype is worth it. It's not going to be I don't know if I want to name names here, but the big fail launches, the elephant in the room, we all know who we're talking about.
The funniest thing I think between the differences between both games is they both had launch issues with like server instability and things like that. Error 37 versus the random disconnects from Path of Exile. But I think the main difference is how the community handles it and like how the community managers handle it, especially since they, as you said, they've been so communicative on Twitter and everything like that on the forums, talking to people. I think people are much more positive about it instead of being like, "Oh, you guys, I paid $60 for this game and I can't get onto it." People are like, "Well, this is a free to play game and it's an awesome game and they're indie devs and you guys are working really hard on getting up. Good job on having so many people coming to the game on the first day."
Right.
People are happy to be disconnected. I know I
Right.
was.
Yeah, the
I
forums
thought
were
it was
actually
awesome.
pretty positive, which was a huge surprise. But and the other thing is, well, it's Diablo. Obviously, that's who we're talking about. But Blizzard, they're a multi-billion-dollar. Are they billion? Pretty sure they're billion-dollar company now, or
Yeah,
they
every
have I don't know
company.
tons of revenue, and they've launched games before. They have World of Warcraft, the biggest MMO, and they've launched games before. They had pre-orders, so they should have anticipated the launch. They should have had that down. They're an established company. This is an indie developer, and their launch went much smoother.
Yeah, I think they've done pretty well, especially with patches and things like that. I think they've got really good server architecture in that, you get 1 minute downtime for patches is brilliant instead of like, 8 hours or something like that.
Right? No, yeah, that one has also been amazing. No,
So they've
it's
done a good
actually
job handling that. Yeah.
absolutely. So let's talk about. Well, one big thing I noticed when I got on is I hadn't played. I played closed beta a little bit, but I just couldn't get into it, knowing the characters were going to be wiped.
Yeah.
Side note: so no more character wipes if you're just getting into this. This is basically the game's release. Your characters
For
will
better
stay
or worse, your
for
characters will stay.
for better or worse. But I remember playing in like September time frame, and I felt the game was like it was clunky. It felt when I was trying to move around, it felt clunky. But what are your thoughts on? Because I noticed it feels much smoother. Like they made it optimized and they made it smooth. It feels good. It feels right. What are your thoughts on the difference in just the feel of the game? Um,
I think you've probably noticed the difference more than I have because I've been playing fairly constantly over the past few months, and they've made some incremental changes. Like I remember they made some changes to the way certain skills work, and they've become much smoother. Like I think whirling blades was one that was really awkward for me. It still causes a bit of desync sometimes, but it's much smoother and things like that now. So yeah, I think there has been some changes, but I didn't notice a huge difference between that and open beta. I noticed a lot of like aesthetic changes to the way skills function, things like that, like things like bowstrings twanging and Spike looking a lot nicer and things like that. Those are the things that really stood out for me as a well, immediately this has changed. Oh, and the Exile on the beach being voiced was pretty neat. That was the
Oh
first
yeah,
thing I noticed.
I didn't even notice that. Well, I mean, let's go right into the next thing, which is the biggest content update was Act 3. Open Beta
Yeah.
brought in Act 3. What do you think of Act 3?
Act 3 is massive. The areas in it are huge, and people are having mixed responses about this. I guess being used to the smaller areas, relatively speaking, in the earlier acts, having such large maps in Act 3, I don't know, is a bit of a mixture for some people. I really like it. I like sort of moving through it, but it can be a bit frustrating trying to rush through Act 3, which is what I've been doing, trying to level characters. But
Yeah, I've
overall, though,
definitely, that quest with the sewers, and there's that
yeah,
part got confusing because you have on each map you have like a sewer, and then you have the top map, and I'm like, I don't know where to go. I don't know
yeah,
which
spans
one
across
I'm
three
supposed to be
maps.
in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not often that you get a quest that spans over three maps like that in the early ones. Overall, I think the design's really amazing, and just as far as looks, I think Act 3 is probably one of the most impressive looking games thematically. There's something just about a big ruined city is just awesome. It feels
Oh,
great.
oh yeah, and I remember I walking into a room and it was just filled with corpses stacked,
Oh
corpses from
yeah.
ground to ceiling, and that's you don't see that in games anymore. This is a hardcore.
that
They're not
that
pulling the punches.
that took me back to Diablo 1 that did the bodies
Right.
stacked up and things like that. Yeah, that's pretty intense. It's actually pretty full on.
Yeah,
I was
they're
like, "Whoa,"
yeah. It's like
almost cringing going through there.
I know. It's like this. I'm reminded of the Holocaust now. This I don't know how I feel about this.
If their objective was to make you hate piety, I think that's pretty effective.
They did.
Which is
Yeah.
bitch.
I mean, we don't want to ruin it for you guys, but just wait for the stacks and rooms of corpses. And heads. There's like heads everywhere, severed.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
pretty.
I mean, it really does capture that gritty feel of the, Diablo
Yeah,
1 and
definitely.
Diablo 2. It really
Yeah.
does.
Yeah, definitely. From washing up on the beach and having it all grungy and corpses and stuff littered around, and everyone in their dodgy ramshackle armor to the dead bodies in Act 3. It's pretty cool thematically, I think.
It really is, yeah. And that going from Act 1 is kind of like dark, and you're in these prisons, and then Act 2 kind of opens up and it's brighter. You get to be outside a lot more. And then Act 3, you're in this big, ruined city with kind of cool little Greek architecture and those giant statues that come and kill you. And
Yeah,
it's a
they're cool.
nice change ups.
Yeah. It's refreshing from like I always hated the desert act in Diablo 2, but
And those
this
goddamn
is
wasps. Remember those?
yeah. This is similar to like that desert thing, but it feels a lot better because it's a cityscape. So I'm pretty happy with their choice in theming this act. It's been pretty cool. I'm keen to see what they do with future acts. I think they're going to get bigger and more impressive than the last. So that they might eventually have to go back and redesign the initial acts if they want to revamp them or not. But I don't know. We'll see what they do. Pretty
That's right, and
interesting.
that's what their plan is, isn't it? They're just gonna keep adding acts after act after
Yeah.
act to the game.
Sort of casually, Chris said that if the game remains profitable, they will add an act each year for the next decade, and that's their plan. So we could
That
see something like 10 acts.
Yeah, that's amazing, and that's it's well, we should support these devs. I just want to say right now, like it's well worth spending your money to buy some stashes, and these guys, you can tell they have a passion for the game.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I've got my vampiric weapon aura
Yeah, I need to
and my
I need
kiwi.
to start buying up some stuff, get a bunch of stashes, and how does that aura look?
It's pretty cool actually. Something I just noticed last night, which I didn't notice before. They might have even added it in. Was it's got an on-hit effect now, where when you hit them, little vampire bats sort of fly off the enemies. So I thought, well, that's pretty
Huh,
cool.
that's kind of cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, if you're worried about a real money affecting the game, you can only buy aesthetic upgrades, and then things like stash utility stuff. They're not going to
yeah,
actually make your character more
convenience
powerful.
basically. Chris made an interesting point on that was people saying isn't buying a stash tab essentially pay to win. But he said since the accounts are free to make, you could essentially make infinite ults to haul your weapons around. So It's
Right.
just a convenience factor. Yeah,
Right.
so I think
Absolutely.
that
You guys listening, don't do that. Go support the devs.
that said, it's well worth buying the stash tabs. I love having extra stash
Yeah.
tabs.
I mean, it is just still simpler. I'm so lazy. I'm not going to log on to an extra account. I would rather buy this tab.
Yeah, that's me.
Right.
So something I think interesting about Act Three as well was that they haven't even finished it. They plan to add additional areas onto Act Three. Now I think it's massive already, but they've got a few other zones planned out which they wanted to get the act out for in time for open beta, but they also wanted to hold back and make sure these extra zones were worth it. So
Ah, that's
interested
cool.
to see what they do with that
Yeah,
since we've had the boss fight and
that's
everything.
pretty exciting news. What about the? How have you thought about the kind of overall difficulty of the game in the beta so far? Was there a big change from closed beta to open beta?
Yeah, I think really massive change actually, because obviously they had to rebalance everything, going from four difficulties down to three difficulties, with the extra act to make things a bit smoother and things like that. And they've sort of like leveled out the difficulty curve, and then it peaks up at the end of each act and at the end of each difficulty. So you can really sort of hit a wall in Act Three, in Cruel and things like that. And Merciless Act Three is pretty struggle, but overall, I think it's a much harder game now than what it was in closed beta. I felt I breezed through the first three difficulties, and then things got really hard at the end of in the last difficulty in closed beta. But now I think I guess it's much more difficult constantly throughout the game. Normal's still pretty cruisy, and you can get through normal with even a dodgy build. But yeah, overall, I think I guess it's just a much better difficulty curve now.
Right. So you say it's a smoother curve, rather than like a cliff. It's a much more smoother.
Yeah, you don't hit that wall in Inferno, basically.
Right. It's not like trying to start playing Eve Online and you have to read a thesis.
Well, maybe Path of Exile can be a bit overwhelming for new people.
That it really is true, but I think that's the appeal of the game because I mean I'm going to
Definitely,
go on a
definitely.
rant a little bit about game development, but I think in the last few years people have developers have caved in to lazy people who say I don't want a death penalty, I don't want to I want to be the best at everything, I don't want to I want to be able to respec all the time. And what that really does is it removes the element of player choice. So your choices are becoming meaningless, and that is what Path of Exile has brought back, like the meaningful choice, because you can't do a full respec. So every point you put in is meaningful, and
Yeah.
there are death penalties, and it's just a much more I don't know, it's a better handled game.
The devs they've said it before, they've made the game they wanted to play, they wanted to see. And especially in the free to play realm, there's just no game like Path of Exile that provides, you've got League of Legends and things like that where you can buy skins, and people love that. And League of Legends and that are relatively difficult games for free to play games. But Path of Exile is like extremely difficult, it has a ton of depth, and has huge amounts of customization, which is really important in that free to play game because people, they want to be able to play with their friends and show off, how sick their build looks. So I think, yeah, it's just something people have been craving. So I think it's going to do amazingly.
Right, absolutely. That customization really is the key because I mean, we'll go back to the Diablo 3 or the WoW example. Is that anymore? Your character is exactly like every other character of that class. There might be some minor differences, but you can basically close your eyes, pick things, and you're good to go. You can't screw up your character. But this is, you're constantly, as I'm playing, I'm constantly thinking, ooh, this would be an interesting build. What if I took that keystone combined with these skills? And it's just very exciting to try to come up with all these new different builds that you can do.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it has a lot of appeal in varying degrees as well. At the more serious end, you've got the people that want to really hardcore theory craft the most optimal builds in that, and then at the opposite end, you've got people that are happy to just sort of play through a long time on one character and make like a really off-class build. Like they want to impress people by making a witch that uses a two-handed sword or something like that. So they can do that, and they can essentially get through normal and then slowly push through, in default league through the other difficulties. And be satisfied by that, the ability to be able to show off their personality a bit.
Right. No, I think that's one of the really key points of the game. It allows the player to play. It doesn't hold your hand.
That's it.
Yeah, let's see. Oh yeah, no, I was going to ask you about. Or let's do a little plug for your channel right now. You're doing a build of the week every week. Talk about that. I think that's a fantastic idea.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty tired at the moment because it's pretty much the past 2 days I've been playing pretty full on trying to get this last build that I've just put out the build guide for. It was a Blood Magic Bow Duelist, and essentially every week I hold a poll selecting offering 3 different builds that my subscribers or other viewers can vote on, and then I'll spend the next week leveling that build with the eventual goal of giving like a guide to that build. And in over the course of the week, I'll provide some recaps of how I got to level 20, how I got to level 40, and then the end game sort of build and things like that. So you guys get to see the development of it and then the actual build in its final form. But yeah, it can be pretty full on, especially it was a bit much to I bit off a bit more than I could chew in the first week of open beta with no gear and no with the
Yeah, no
things being a bit
skills.
unstable and and never having played Act 3, it was a bit of a struggle, but I eventually got there and got the build out a little bit late, but yeah, it's been pretty good. So
Yeah, I mean
check
that's a
that out, Mike.
fantastic idea. And since Path of Exile is so difficult, that's for people who don't, who I think I have a lot of viewers who they do a lot of other stuff outside, not the hardcore gamers, but it's nice to be able to go to someone's channel and watch their build and take that build, and so now you've saved yourself a few hours of reading through countless forum threads and really saves time and explains the game well.
Yeah, even more importantly, I think it shows off some concepts of the game. Like someone mentioned that, seeing the Blood Magic Bow Duelist was like, this is what really drew me to the game. The ability to do things like this and, showing off how those different skills and passives and gear and things interact and how you can go about designing a character. I think that's the main thing, even more if you don't take the build.
Right, exactly. It's the mindset or the thought process behind making a build. How are you making those decisions? And being able to see that is very useful.
Yeah, that's it. So yeah, that's been pretty positive so far, and I plan on doing that for a long time to come. Maybe the next decade, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I really think it's going to be around for that long. You really will. But let's talk about, I want to ask you about your build. I think I'm interested in that. Tell me like what kind of build it is and what are you doing right now?
Well, my first one was the Blood Magic Bow Duelist, and it was based loosely on a player called Nugian's hardcore 1 week race build that he used. The passive tree was based pretty much on that. It focuses on, extreme survivability and extreme reliability. You forgo your mana, focus exclusively on health, and use that health as your pool to cast spells, and it allows you to run certain auras and things with basically no cost, and be able to spam really highly leveled and expensive skills, while essentially regenerating the health that you spend and things like that. So very, very reliable. Not huge on the DPS as you're leveling, but later in the game it really sort of comes out of its shell in terms of DPS when you start leveling up your skills a lot, since you can afford really expensive skills. With the blood magic, it means it sort of really flourishes in the late game, and it's a cool build all around. It's a good build for I guess early on in open beta, since the skills are all really easy to obtain. So I enjoyed leveling it overall.
Yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know, blood magic is it takes you're using health instead of mana. And,
Yeah, basically.
yeah, and that's so interesting.
It's basically the min maxer's dream, since you can don't have to worry about any intelligence. You can just focus on health.
Right, yeah, I try, and you can actually get a blood magic support gem as well, and I tried that a little bit, but it failed horribly on my build right now. It was not fun. So I've been playing a
Yep.
Lightning Strike
Yeah.
Templar, and I picked it because I don't know what I was doing, so I just thought, hey, I want to be somebody that's like a paladin, and I want to use a mace and a shield and wear plate, and then I want to go from there, and so I've kind of found this Lightning Strike Templar build. And it's going so far, pretty well so far. It's pretty tanky. You have lots of health, lots of armor. Your shield, I have max resist right now, and it's really easy to max your resist with the build. But the DPS is pretty subpar, I believe, and so I'm probably going to level it up to 50 or 60, and then try some different things. It is a little bit boring when you just spam, lightning strike and tank things, and that's about the extent of the build, but it's been interesting and fun, and I think it's a really simple and easy build for new players to do.
Yeah, it sounds like a good build to experience the content with, especially being nice and tanky with the plate and shield and that setup.
Right,
Sounds pretty good.
absolutely. Although I did die, I made a stupid mistake and died level 28 in hardcore.
Uh, Continuing on in default.
Yeah, continuing on. Yeah, I want to mention that. So I recommend everybody start their characters in hardcore, regardless of whether you're a real hardcore player, because when your character dies, it just moves into the softcore, the default league, and so you can keep playing that character. But hardcore actually teaches you some really good gameplay skills, like because you're much more cognizant of your health and of when
Yeah.
you're dying, and you really try to avoid death, and that's a good habit to pick up playing this game.
Yeah, even in default, since you have the experience penalties, it's a good system overall because it allows the people that only want to do hardcore to only do hardcore, and it still has a 100% risk of them dying because they're never going to play their characters once they're in default. To them, hardcore is the only game mode. But the people that don't mind and maybe get attached to their characters, they don't lose them. They can play them on default if they feel like it. So it's a brilliant system for both sides. Like it really has no drawbacks.
It really is. I agree. It's a perfect balance of risk versus reward. Oop, are you there, Ziggy?
Yeah, yeah. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought my yeah. Never mind. So yeah, let's finish up this conversation. I want to ask you: do you have any? Well, I'll give a tip and then see if you can think of a tip for the players here as we go through here. This is something I learned yesterday: is that you can actually vendor sets of rare items for chaos orbs. And before
Oh,
that,
indeed.
I had no idea that you could do that. And so I had just been, if a rare item wasn't any good, rare is a yellow item. If it wasn't any good, I would just vendor it by itself for some alteration shards, which are pretty useless. But if you collect, like all the armor, all the rings, and a weapon, and vendor that, you actually get a chaos orb.
Yeah, it's great for your sort of your dodgy rares that you would just want to keep aside for that, or even low level rares you can do it with as well. So it is a pretty neat recipe, and a lot of people are taking advantage of the fact people don't know that in trade chat by buying their old crappy rares for really cheap. So definitely a bit of room for arbitrage there. Good
Oh
tip, good
yeah,
tip.
there is massive room for arbitrage in this game. Massive. That's another great thing about it.
Solid tip. So I guess my tip then would be one aimed at beginner players, since a lot of people tend to overlook this with their first ever build when designing their first ever build. Defensive things are really important in Path of Exile. I'm talking about your health, your energy shield, your armor, your evasion. All of those are super important, especially resistances are very important. So in your passive skill tree, I recommend focusing on at least 50% defensive skills. I see a lot of people like beginner players going in and seeing all of the awesome DPS skills around on the passive tree and building a build around all of those, and unfortunately not being able to progress beyond cruel. So try and get as much life and things like that as you can. Path of Exile can be pretty punishing.
It really can, and it's that old adage that you're not doing any DPS while you're dead.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this has been fantastic, Ziggy. We've got to do this again
Yeah,
more often
totally.
and regularly. Like
It's good
this,
fun. I pretty much love talking about the games I love playing.
yeah. And
Simple as that.
and you have your sweet, mellow Australian accent, and can't beat that.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
But yeah, hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll talk soon again.
You too. Thanks for having me on. See you later, Joe.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, check out Ziggy's channel. Be sure to do that. I'll link to it in the description.
Cheers.